This video is sponsored by Favreau Shooter. Ever since the public firing of Gina Carano from Star Wars on February 10th, more information of the power play that went on behind the scenes at Lucasfilm has come out. Between a scoop from Entertainment Hollywood, an interview with former New York Times reporter Barry Weiss, and what we have learned from our own sources, we can now paint a fuller picture of what actually went down, and why Gina Carano was the one who had to go, despite many other individuals associated with Lucasfilm having issued far more incendiary comments on social media. In this video, we will present all of that information as we go through the events that culminated with the firing of Gina Carano, and why Lucasfilm had it in for her in particular. By the time we get to the end of this video, many may not feel like watching much of anything from either Lucasfilm or on Disney Plus at large right now. So we have an alternative for you. As we mentioned, this video is sponsored by Favreau Shooter, which is one of the best shooter games of 2020. It's designed for mobile devices, has almost 60 million players in total, and around 1 million players are playing Frag every day. The rules are super easy, barely an inconvenience. Your mission is to destroy enemy bunkers, and to help you do that, there are more than 80 different characters with unique powers, from which you select a battle deck of 5. There's always new content, and each new version has a new fragger, the most recent being Stella the Good Witch. In addition to the default solo gameplay, Favreau Shooter comes in different modes that enable you to interact with other users. In 2 vs 2 mode, you and a friend or a random partner can build a battle deck of 6, 3 characters each, that you can use to challenge other players. Since Favreau Shooter sponsors this video, we naturally have a deal for you, even if you're already a player. If you download the game using the link in the description, you'll get $6 worth of rewards for free, 1 gold chest, 500 coins, and 50 diamonds. So check out that link in the description while we get back to the firing of Gina Carano. By all outwardly appearances, this all began on August 2nd of 2020, when Gina Carano tweeted a historic picture of one man who would not submit to the pressure and refused to give the proper salutation during, that strife in Germany back in the 1940s. This historic symbol of refusing to submit to totalitarian rule caused great offense to our modern-day authoritarians, and proving her point perfectly, they demanded she figuratively retract that statement by submitting and tweeting out their slogans. Carano did not submit. However, in her refusal to do so, she had painted a big bullseye on her back. From this point onwards, those who had demanded submission decreed that she must be a conservative, and from their point of view, this made Gina Carano beneath contempt. From that point in time onwards, they would come gunning for her non-stop, looking for any excuse to latch onto in order to cancel her. This would have been bad enough if these ideologues were restricted to the Twitter sphere, but alas, they were also within the Lucasfilm offices. After a month and a half of Carano being the subject of a targeted harassment campaign, things escalated in mid-September when she was pressured into stating her pronouns on Twitter. Like the vast overwhelming majority of Twitter users on the face of the planet, Carano had not done so from the outset, and she wasn't about to do so because of pressure. So in response, she posted "beep bop boop" in reference to the noises R2-D2 makes. This drove the more ideologically inclined into a frenzy, and from this point onwards, she was labeled not just a conservative, but transphobic to boot, even though there was not one shred of evidence to support any such assertion. However, no evidence is required in mob rule. Gina Carano told Barry Weiss that after this, Disney did reach out to her and tried to force her to issue an apology. Earlier on last year, before The Mandalorian came out, they wanted me to use their exact wording for an apology over pronoun usage. I declined and offered a statement in my own words. I made clear I wanted nothing to do with mocking the transgender community, and was just drawing attention to the abuse of the mob in forcing people to put pronouns in their bio. Lucasfilm's response was to exclude her from all press and promotion for the show, which would explain why one artist painted her over and replaced her with Ahsoka Tano, as we've covered before. She told Barry Weiss, "That was heartbreaking, but I didn't want to take away from the hard work of everyone who worked on the project, so I said okay. That was the last time I was contacted about any type of public statement or apology from Lucasfilm." What we have learned from our sources, though, indicate that many very high up in Lucasfilm were now even more determined that Gina Carano had to be cancelled. While all of this was going on, Season 2 of The Mandalorian premiered, and there were many indicators to suggest that outside of Baby Yoda himself, Gina Carano's Cara Dune was the emerging fan-favorite character. On the surface, you would take it the powers that be at Lucasfilm would be happy about this, since female representation is stated to be Kathleen Kennedy's ultimate goal for the franchise. And in Cara Dune, there was a strong female character that was also a fan favorite, something Rey never was. According to our sources though, whose claims we as usual must state cannot be independently verified, and therefore must be taken with a grain of salt, the success of Cara Dune did not sit well with Kathleen Kennedy. As we have covered in numerous earlier videos, Jon Favreau and his team have relative autonomy on The Mandalorian, and report directly to Bob Iger, not Kathleen Kennedy. According to our sources, this does not go down well with the Kathleen Kennedy faction of Lucasfilm. Not just because it diminishes their power, but because the commercial and popular success of The Mandalorian threatens to creatively undermine the brand of Star Wars they want to push forward, as represented by the sequel trilogy and the High Republic Publishing Initiative. Worse still, the smooth operation Jon Favreau is running on The Mandalorian makes Kathleen Kennedy look inept by comparison, as all of her productions are troubled and more directors have been fired from directing a Star Wars movie than have actually made one. Worst of all though is Cara Dune. As our good friend Doomcock already has reported, and our own sources agree with, Kathleen Kennedy has always been able to excuse the diminishing returns of her Star Wars with the narrative that the fans are simply not willing to embrace Rey because she is female. Yet, those fans very clearly embrace Cara Dune, which shatters that narrative. In short, Jon Favreau and The Mandalorian made Kathleen Kennedy and her faction look incompetent, and Gina Carano's Cara Dune made it look like they had always been wrong in their assessment of why their movies hadn't caught on. All of this made Gina Carano a target. Ever since the release of The Mandalorian's first season, after which Cara Dune was a certified hit with audiences, there had been rumors that Gina Carano would be getting her own spin-off series. We now know this is true, and Rangers of the New Republic would have been that series. However, through her continued tweets, most of which were inoffensive to all but a mostly ideological-driven minority, Carano inadvertently provided the Kennedy faction with the ammunition they could use to take her and her alone down. Barry Weiss brought up numerous examples of far more incendiary messages on social media than anything Carano put up, and some of that was even from her Mandalorian co-star Pedro Pascal. But as Barry Weiss in not so many words put it, there is one set of rules for those who conform to the convictions generally held in Hollywood, and another for those who don't. While Pedro Pascal was shown leniency, while Christina Ariel was even shown support when her own history of incendiary tweets were exposed, Gina Carano was shown neither. In a February 16th article in The Hollywood Reporter, it is suggested that Gina Carano was meant to participate in the announcement of the Rangers of the New Republic show on the December 10th Disney Investor Day, although the publication's sources disagree on that. No contracts for any more Cara Dune appearances had been signed at this point, either for Rangers of the New Republic, more Mandalorian, or any Mandalorian spin-offs. That no contracts were signed by this time suggests that Lucasfilm already then were determined not to sign her up for a spin-off series of her own, despite fan demand clearly being there. According to The Hollywood Reporter, they were even looking for an opportunity to fire her, but she stubbornly wouldn't post anything they could latch onto as an excuse for such a drastic measure. Not for another 2 months. On February 10th, Gina Carano shared a TikTok post which suggested parallels between how the German authorities made the populace hate a subset of the population for their background in the lead-up to that strife back in the 1940s, with how authorities inspire similar hatred today, only based on political leanings. despite multiple high-profile individuals of Jewish persuasion stating that while such comparisons are generally best avoided, they saw no bigoted intent. Lucasfilm, however, latched onto the opportunity and issued a public statement saying, Gina Carano is not currently employed by Lucasfilm and there are no plans for her to be in the future. Nevertheless, her social media posts denigrating people based on their cultural and religious identities are abhorrent and unacceptable. The first part of that statement reflects Lucasfilm's intention. As for the second part, our own sources claim that Lucasfilm are fully aware that this is not reflective of reality, but they added it anyway out of sheer spite and malice in an allegedly deliberate attempt at ruining her career. In the February 16th article from The Hollywood Reporter, they say, the decision to banish Carano from the Disney Kingdom went higher than Mandalorian creator Jon Favreau and was made by Lucasfilm executives. This is code for that Kathleen Kennedy ordered this. She evidently didn't clear it with Disney executives though, because they would have not wanted this information released on their most recent investor day, which it was. Carano was not informed of the firing in advance. She only learned of this when the rest of the world did. And the message did indeed travel the world, as it was picked up by other news outlets worldwide. Few outlets provided any details of what she actually had posted in social media, but most included Lucasfilm's claim that she had denigrated people based on their cultural and religious identities. On the same day, she was dropped by her talent agency. According to our sources, so as usual, do take this with a grain of salt. This was all around a great victory for the Kathleen Kennedy faction of Lucasfilm. Not only were they able to get rid of a hated conservative, which they consider Carano to be, they were able to smear her as bigoted, thereby preserving the narrative that Star Wars fans are all horrible people who still don't like strong females. They only responded to Cara Dune because Gina Carano is as horrible as them. At the same time, they were able to erode more of the goodwill The Mandalorian generated with the Luke Skywalker reveal, and point to that now there is some trouble associated with Jon Favreau's productions as well. Now, they just have to convince audiences their own publishing initiative, The High Republic, is worth the paper it's printed on. For most talent out there, being dropped and smeared the way Gina Carano was would equal instant career death. Gina Carano herself rose from the ashes the very next day, when Ben Shapiro announced she would produce and star in the first feature film to be developed by the Daily Wire's production wing. Carano stated, "I am sending out a direct message of hope to everyone living in fear of cancellation by the totalitarian mob. I have only just begun using my voice, which is now freer than ever before. I hope it inspires others to do the same. They can't cancel us if we don't let them." In later videos, we will explore what Gina Carano and Ben Shapiro teaming up might mean for Hollywood going forward, as well as how this all might impact Jon Favreau and The Mandalorian. Be sure to check back for that, but for now, let us know your thoughts on all of this in the comments. And if you need a break from Disney Plus and all things Star Wars, check out Frag Pro Shooter. Link is in the description.